Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Why Don't I Just Get Started? I've been away for a few days, so I'm sorry for that because I know a lot of people have been eagerly awaiting my latest video, so I'm sorry to keep you waiting. But I'm glad to be here tonight. It is Sunday evening. It's November 3rd, 2013, and I'm really glad to be here. Tonight's episode of Why Don't I Just Get Started is entitled Getting Through the Tough Stuff. Getting through the tough stuff, the tough tasks, the things we don't want to do, the things we are dreading, the things we procrastinate on, the things we fear, and, of course, the things that create more problems the more we delay them, the more we wait on them. So there are just some things in life that we usually have to get done, and if we don't, there's some kind of penalty or problem. And of course, the ironic thing is that once we get started or once we get them done, they're often not as hard as we thought they were. Of course, if we wait to the last minute, then yes, they are, and yes, they can be a lot harder and cause a lot more problems than if we had just started them sooner. So how do we get through those things? What do we need to do when something's facing us that we don't want to do and we need to do it? Let's say it's a term paper or it's some paperwork we have to fill out or something we have to do. How do we get through it? Well, there are a lot of ways. And probably I think what we need to do is set things up ahead of time. And then we need to set things up during. And then we need to set things up afterwards. So what do we need to do ahead of time? Well, ahead of time, what I need to do is I need to set up my physical environment so it's clean and organized and spacious and kind of that feng shui feeling, if you will. Feng shui, actually, all that word means is space. And I know the whole feng shui thing has been taken maybe to the extremes and for some people, but it's all it means is space. You create space, whatever that looks like for you. So if things are cluttered, generally most people don't do well in that. So I need to set things up ahead of time, and for me that's a clean work area. It doesn't need to be 100% perfect, and the point is not to spend all your time organizing so that you're using that as another delaying tactic. But you need to have things set up ahead of time. If you require certain tools, pens, paper, hammers, whatever you need, but if you require certain tools, then you should have those ready ahead of time. So we need to set things up ahead of time. And we need to also make sure other things are not in place or not going to interfere, like, for example, turning off the phone or turning off the computer unless you're needing to use the computer. But just set things up. Maybe have a little food before you get started so that you have the energy you need. Okay, so you're setting things up ahead of time. Now you're also setting things up during the time. And this isn't that much, but what I do to make more of an enjoyable atmosphere to my work is I have a cup of coffee or a little snack that's sitting there with me so that it's just comfort food, if you will. It's just something, as I said, usually for me it's just a cup of coffee, a nice warm cup of coffee, and it's sitting there so while I'm working I can take a sip and I just feel happy. It just is a nice thing. And finally, during the during part is, if possible, I like to have music. I like to have some kind of music, and depending on the task, it might be praise or worship or instrumental music, it might be meditation music, or if it's a really tough task, I play rap or pop music or rock and roll or something. I like rap. And sometimes I play some songs that I really enjoy, and it just makes me feel like I'm in control of my environment. Now, I don't want the music too loud or too soft, but I want it at a nice level so that it's not overwhelming me, but it's there and it makes me feel happy. So I set things up during. Also, the lighting needs to be right, the seating needs to be right, things need to just be good in my work environment. And finally, I've set things up before, I've set things up during, and I set things up after. Now, what is after? After means that I have promised, or I am promising myself some sort of reward when I complete this task or this part of the task. By the way, the task might take a long time and you might need to break it down into parts. Generally, for me, I can work focused for 45 minutes, and after 45 minutes I need a break. Everyone's different maybe, but that works for me. But when I have done whatever my time is, or when I finish my project or my tough task, then I promise myself something nice. For me, I have a big old collection of comic books, and I'll get some out ahead of time, and I'll put them sometimes right by where I'm working, and they'll be right there, and I know that they're waiting for me. They're waiting for me to read them as soon as I finish my task. And there's one other thing, and sometimes we don't think about this, and it's sometimes harder to really imagine this, but it helps to think how good I will feel when I get this task done, or this part of the task. I'm just going to feel really good. And here's what sometimes happens. I get into the tough task, and I get going on it, and I suddenly find two things happen. One, it's not as tough as I thought it was going to be. The hardest part was just getting started. And I'm having so much fun, yes, fun, doing this, getting it done. I'm feeling so good that sometimes I just power through it and I get it all done, and then I'm feeling really great. So there's some tips on getting through the tough task. All right, my name is Robert Farrell. This is Why Don't I Just Get Started? Getting Through the Tough Stuff. Thanks for joining me.